Welcome to Friday. It is July 23rd, 2021. I'm your host, David Dole. Lots to talk about today, especially in the wrap-up segment. Last week, so if you weren't here last week, I have changed the Tweets of the Week segment to the weekly wrap-up. I think it's a better description of what that segment actually is, and I never actually posted last week's segment as a separate video because it was way too long. So I've now tried to cut it down a little bit. I'm not going to be going as deep into some of these topics as I would normally, but still, the amount of stories that come out each week that I don't get to cover, I still want to wait to at least reference them or mention them and give you a link below the video in the separate video when it's cut out of this live stream to go and click on the links and learn more if you missed any of those wrap-up stories. But before I get to any of that, first, of course, if you want to support the show, you can go to therationalnational.com/join. That's the Patreon page. You can also join on YouTube, hit the join button, or send super chats in throughout this live stream, and I will take those, of course, as well. And all the links are below the video. PayPal link, the join link for YouTube, Patreon link, all that stuff. All right. A lot of chats, normie chats coming in right now. Let me just get to this first story. I feel like am I missing something? What am I missing? I don't know. I think I'm good. All right. Let me get to this first story and then, oh yeah, breakdown. Let me show you or tell you what's going to be in today's show. So you'll see the first story in a second. No point to even intro that. I'll also talk about Biden, his new move in Cuba, him pulling a Trump. Also, Eric Swalwell. Why am I talking about Eric Swalwell? Well, you will see. And Arizona, their thoughts on Kyrsten Sinema and what that may mean for her future in the state. And as I'll get to, as I said, the wrap up. There's a lot of stories in the wrap up that I missed, that I didn't do proper segments on, but I will talk about those as well. All right. Let me start with the first story. And there's already an eyelash in my eye, so that's great. We're starting off solid. Let's hope this doesn't bother me throughout the video. All right, let's get this chat off the screen. Canada hit a big milestone this week, surpassing the U.S. in vaccination rate, despite starting off very slow at the beginning of the year. But Canada is still behind the U.S. on an incredibly important issue, and I'll get to more on that later. First, if you followed my channel throughout this year, I did several videos on how Canada's vaccination rate had been horrible at the beginning of the year. We sort of put our bets on, or Trudeau put his bet on, putting a lot of money into vaccines from, of course, American producers. But we could have had our own vaccine producer and distributor as we used to in the 80s, but I'm not going to go deeper into that. I discussed a lot of that during the beginning of the year. But now, Trudeau's investment at the beginning of this pandemic has begun to pay off, and Canadians are taking the vaccine at a much higher rate than Americans. So let's take a look at some of this data here. So share of people vaccinated against COVID-19 as of July 22nd, 2021. You see here Canada has a total share of 70.64% of Canadians have at least one vaccine, with 53% having fully vaccinated, so both vaccines. And so 70% overall. US right now, 48% only have both vaccines. So you see here this week, Canada just surpassed the US, and it's continuing. A lot of this, I think, is due to American media. There is definitely a lot more conservative misinformation out there that is more prominent in American mainstream media compared to Canada. There really is no Tucker Carlson in Canada the way there is, of course, in the US. So I think that's a big piece of it. Take a look here at over time how this looked. So daily COVID-19 vaccine doses administered per 100 people. So you see here at about end of April, it looks like. Now it's gone. But Canada is there, barely. But if you see faintly Canada in the image, there it is. Our vaccination rate at about, late April, looks like, May, across the U.S. in the amount of vaccines per 100 people on a daily basis, while the U.S. right now is sort of plateauing. That said, Canada, the rate is going down as more people are vaccinated. And now we're beginning to get to a point where the U.S. is at where we're almost hitting a wall, and less people are wanting to get the vaccine. And last graph here, this is daily COVID-19 cases per million people. The U.S. right now seeing incredible, insane increases in daily COVID cases because of the Delta variant that is a lot more transmissible than previous variants. Canada has sort of, it's gotten clearly a lot better, but checking recent numbers coming out, we are now hitting a point that we're either staying the same in terms of daily COVID cases, or in the case of Ontario, it's actually increasing compared to last week. So we're at a point now where if you are unvaccinated, you are very likely to get COVID-19. That's what medical professionals are saying, because this is where the virus is largely spreading. Of course, there's always a chance that you may get COVID-19 regardless of how you're vaccinated. But even if you get it, as somebody who's vaccinated, it's a lot less likely to impair you in any sort of way. So the actual symptoms, if you have the vaccine, are lessened because of the vaccine. Whereas if you are unvaccinated, you are much likely to end up in the hospital. Recent figures out of cities like LA, 98.8% of people in the hospital from COVID-19 are unvaccinated. So even if you get the COVID-19 while being vaccinated, you're not going to end up in the hospital. More than likely, people that are unvaccinated, of course, are ending up there. But now let's get to this one area that the U.S. is still much better than Canada on. And that is, of course, the TRIPS waiver. So Canada, still along with the UK and Germany, are still standing in the way of the WTO TRIPS waiver, meaning that this waiver would allow the vaccines to be produced and distributed globally for a fraction of the cost. Biden recently, as I covered, I believe it was 2 months ago or a month ago, he finally came out in support of the TRIPS waiver. And I thought at the time that would sort of pressure other major countries like Canada, like Germany, like the UK to fall in line and support the waiver as well. But they haven't. They're still stalling, aligning right here, aligning with Big Pharma for various reasons. But that's right now the largest barrier to stopping COVID-19, because, of course, the more you allow COVID-19 to spread, the more you allow it to mutate to the point that there may be a variant down the line that could render the current vaccines ineffective. So we have to vaccinate everybody in the entire world for us to actually eliminate the threat of a COVID-19 variant that could, infect even vaccinated people in a serious way. But more here from Common Dreams. Proponents argue that, if approved, the patent waiver would help facilitate a rapid increase in coronavirus vaccine production, which has thus far failed to meet global needs, particularly in low-income countries, which have received just 1.1% of the 3.7 billion doses administered thus far. The waiver calls for a temporary suspension of vaccine-related intellectual property rules that are barring manufacturers around the world from making generic vaccines, a restriction that has left a handful of powerful pharmaceutical corporations with a monopoly over production. And yeah, that's the obvious reason why these rich countries are not in support of the TRIPS waiver, because they are siding with Big Pharma. So that is still, I think, the largest barrier to any real progress on really ending this pandemic. But at the very least, you see the impact here that media has. So Canadians, a lot more willing to get the vaccine in higher numbers, while Americans are, at least a large segment of the population, are being taken in by conspiracy theories and propaganda around vaccine hesitancy that is unfortunately misinforming millions. All right, that's the vaccine story. There we go. All right, let me grab some chats, and then I'll get to the next story. DVDV says, "Hi, David. Thank you for your voice. Please talk about the M4A marches, Medicare for All marches, which are held this weekend all over the country. Have a great weekend." So I've seen a little bit about this Medicare for All march. Look, if you're going, great, enjoy yourself. But from what I've seen, a lot of the organizing or the organizers of it are, I don't know, a lot of weird stuff going on. There was somebody who was a literal Nazi that was a speaker before they were caught and thankfully removed. But there was someone else announced as a speaker I saw yesterday that is anti-vax, and just a week ago, that same person was also voiced skepticism of Medicare for All, and someone else, a major speaker at the event, backed Tulsi Gabbard over Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary. Tulsi did not support Medicare for All. So, if you can ignore some of the weirdness around the speakers at the event and the organizers of it, I'm sure you'd have a great time if you're free and you show up to a march. It's not going to hurt anybody for sure. So check it out if you want. And also this weekend, if you're in Ohio, Nina Turner holding I think it's this weekend. I should double check. But Nina Turner is holding an event for her campaign, obviously. That's coming up on the election for that, coming up on August 3rd. Let me see if I can find this. Maybe in the break I'll take a closer look. But the event is either this weekend or next weekend. Let me see here. July 24th. So it's this weekend. There you go. So tomorrow in Cleveland, look up Nina Turner, AOC. If you're in Ohio, go support Nina Turner and get out the vote. All right. Mr. Sir says, did you see that children of anti-vax parents are having to go behind their parents' backs to get vaccinated and keep it a secret or become estranged? Children of anti-vax parents are having to go behind their parents' backs to get vaccinated. I did not see this story, but I imagine that's an experience that many are having. Yeah. It's very sad. Very sad. But thankfully, if you're... Can a minor... Can someone, 12 years old go and get vaxxed without their parents? It's actually a good question because I don't know the answer to that. But if they can, then more power to them. They should get vaccinated. Judah McGrath. And by the way, that's why, I should have mentioned in this story, that's why I keep talking about the vaccines. Kids under 12 can't get vaccinated. So, look, if the people that weren't getting vaccinated were hurting nobody but themselves, then yeah, of course, who cares? If they want to get COVID-19 and die, then that's their decision. But I care about the vaccine rates because I have a kid who's under 12, and the more people that there are out there who are unvaccinated, the more of a chance there is that he will get COVID-19 from one of those people when we're out in public or at a restaurant, at a sporting event or something. So that's why I care about these vaccination rates, because their ability, the unvaccinated people, for them to impact people who just can't get the vaccine. But once there is a vaccine approved for kids under 12, then I'll probably stop talking about this issue, at least in terms of, domestically. But it's still going to be, COVID-19 will still be an issue worldwide, with the TRIPS waiver still not being supported by the entirety of the WTO nations. Gina McGrath says, do you have sympathy for unvaccinated people dying of COVID? I feel conflicted because of all right-wing and misinformation, but at the same time, these people need to look at statistics. Yeah, I'm mixed. I feel sympathy in the sense that, the way you feel sympathy for someone who's brainwashed. Now, I did a video on this today, that went out today. Somebody who got COVID-19, and you can watch the video. Someone that got COVID-19 in the hospital, recovering, finally, I assume he was in there for weeks, finally being let out, and he still is not going to get the vaccine. Now, for that person, I have no sympathy. You experienced COVID-19, you almost died, and you're still not getting vaccinated? Okay, then my sympathy ends. But if you're somebody who was just brainwashed, I mean, yeah, I can't help but have sympathy for people like that, because it can be very easy for people to be brainwashed by misinformation. So, yeah, I do care, and I hope those people at some point wake up. Some guy says, hi, David. How come you don't debate anyone? Would like to see you get in the ring one day against right-wingers. I think you would kick ass. Well, thank you, some guy. I just don't view myself as a debater. I'm more of an educator. That's how I've always viewed myself. I'm not I grew up with severe social anxiety, so I'm simply not good talking to new people, let alone debating people I don't know. So I think that's part of the issue for me is that. That said, I did have a radio show that had a call-in segment, and I took calls from people that were, completely insane, and I had a great time. So I don't know. Maybe I would enjoy it, but it's not really something I'm all that interested in doing. Just because I don't think my performance would be all that good, even if I have the stats and the figures and the data on my side. A lot of debates is about performance. So if you can't perform well, then it doesn't matter if the facts are on your side. You're doing a disservice to the issue. So if I feel like I cannot, if I feel a debate of mine, even if the facts are on my side, is going to hurt people's opinions on that issue because I can't perform as well as I should be able to, or as well as others can, then there's no point in me doing it. Ryan Nowicki, your chat's cut off. Let me scroll up. Ryan Nowicki says, if we get things like universal health care, tax the rich, and get out of wars, what are the chances we can keep those for any length of time without removing money in politics or SCOTUS reform first? Let me read this again. If we get things like universal health care, tax the rich, and get out of wars, what are the chances we can keep those for any length of time without removing money in politics or SCOTUS reform first? I almost don't think you can get. I don't think you can get those things really without removing money in politics or SCOTUS reform before. Like I don't. A lot has to happen for Americans to finally get universal health care. I mean, there is so much power in the healthcare industry, in big pharma and health insurance companies in America, that their money is in almost every single lawmaker in Washington. So, it's hard to really get to really address any of these issues in a systemic, real, long-lasting way, unless you get money out of politics first, at least in some form. There may not be a perfect solution immediately, but there has to be more limitations than there is right now. All right. Oh, there's more. Samantha Sider, thank you for your chat. Celeste, thank you for your chat. Sam O says, thoughts on Josh Hawley, new anti-CRT bill, Love America Act. I have not read about this. It sounds ridiculous. The whole CRT debate is it's just not. It's all manufactured by the right. It's what I don't even want to engage in it. It's all just total fucking bullshit. It's amazing though how talented they are when there's an issue they want to really focus on and use it as a distraction from everything else. They get everybody on board. Every single conservative media figure, every single politician, they are gung ho on that. And part of the issue, of course, is they have unified donors that back them all and have certain. And they understand how to distract people with cultural issues, with made-up cultural issues, a way to distract them away from the economic issues, and that's what they're doing with this issue. So it seems to be a constant problem. DVDV says, continued. Well, that's no good, but the marches take place all over. Jen Perlman is also behind it, Maureen Williamson, Susan Sarandon. I'm sure there are good people going. As I said, if you're already going, that's fine. You could show up. I just got questions around some of the organizers and some of the speakers. All right. Gee Studio, thank you for your donation as well. All right. I will be right back as I prep this next story. Spoiler alert. I just saw a chat. Dad's gone, let's party. Am I dad in this situation? I don't mind being dad, but I shouldn't be dad to all of you. I'm not that old. Am I? I guess I'm pretty old. All right, next story. Next story. President Joe Biden's approach to Cuba is showing shades of Trump instead of Obama, as Biden just imposed new sanctions on the country, and this, of course, is in addition to the ongoing embargo that has only worked to hurt the Cuban people. And all of this is going on despite the fact that the rest of the world has no problem at all with Cuba, and 184 countries at the UN recently called for the U.S. to end Cuba embargo for 29th consecutive year, and that was just last month. So this really shows you how out of touch American policy on Cuba is. But let's get to these new sanctions now. And it's important to note these are targeted specifically at individuals in power. So I'll get to more on that in a second, but this is from Al Jazeera. The U.S. imposed sanctions on a senior Cuban security official and an Interior Ministry brigade following a crackdown on anti-government protests earlier this month, the U.S. Treasury Department announced Thursday. So these sanctions aren't going to hurt Cuban civilians the way that a trade embargo does, but it does increase tensions with the country, which is of course a reversal of what Barack Obama did. But what is more bothersome to me than just these sanctions is what Biden said while announcing them, saying that these new Cuba sanctions are just the beginning. So this really is a Trump-style approach to Cuba. The rest of the world sees the U.S. being forceful in a way that clearly is not warranted, that is only working to hurt Cuban civilians. Yet here Biden is going in the Trump direction as opposed to going in the Obama direction and trying to normalize relations with Cuba. And the other part of this, of course, is the obvious hypocrisy. So this from Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez, who tweeted out, "I refute the unfounded and slanderous U.S. government sanctions against Army Corporal Graal Alvaro Lopez Miera and the National Special Brigade. It should rather apply unto itself the Magnitsky Global Act for systemic repression and police brutality that took the lives of 1,021 persons in 2020. So he's pointing out here that the Magnitsky Act allows U.S. to sanction whoever they view as human rights abusers. But the U.S., of course, is a massive offender of human rights across the globe, be it through U.S.-backed coups, U.S.-backed wars, drone strikes. So he's making the point here that if they're going to apply it to us, they should be applying it to themselves, and not to mention, of course, to also U.S. allies like Saudi Arabia or Israel, which have also engaged in countless human rights abuses. So the hypocrisy here is glaring. But if there's any hope at normalizing relations with Cuba, Biden has to start by lifting the embargo, which has only worked to hurt Cuban civilians that are being strangled by the U.S.'s approach to Cuba. All right, very quick story there, but that gave you a good overview. Celeste back with another donation. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Just make sure I got all the chats. All right, let me be right back as I prep the next story. All right, back already. This story is one you may have missed this week, as it didn't really make news, but I thought it was interesting. Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell perfectly explained just how fake politicians in Washington are. Now, I have two clips that I'm going to show you, because despite how great Swalwell's description here is, he's also not immune to what he is describing. So this first clip is going to be him discussing what he's observed as a politician in Washington, and this is a clip from the Midas Touch podcast. Check it out.
It's pro wrestling, to be honest. Many of my colleagues are better suited to work at the WWE. And I say that about Gates because I've worked with him on marijuana issues. I've worked with him on other issues, especially really before Trumpism took off and he turned into a character. And he would, there were times where he would laugh at himself about how stupid he had to act, to keep, the act going. That's what's so frustrating. And this may sound crazy, but if you ran into Matt Gaetz or Ted Cruz or Jim Jordan at the Santa Monica Pier, you would say, these are nice guys. Boy, they're nothing like, what I see them do on Twitter or TV. And I write about this in the book. During the impeachment trial in the Senate, Ted Cruz came up to me, like we bumped into each other in the Senate bathroom, and he said, hey, I think you're doing a great job out there. I just want you to know that. And I'm like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? He just scorched me on Fox News like the night before. He tweets at me like every other week. But to him, if you're a pro wrestler, like it doesn't matter that you hit me over the head in the ring with a steel chair. It's all fake, right? You're just doing what the fans want. So I should just be cool with it because he projects onto me what he does. He thinks that I'm just performing as well. And that's what's most sickening is that I don't even know what these guys believe. Like, I really don't. I think they just are giving what they think the fans want, what they think the fans want. It really is crazy. I'm not kidding you. Like, I will walk by. There's a colleague of mine who is a ranking member of one of their committees, and he and I had gone out before, had gone to dinner before, had tried to work on some issues together, like in the healthcare space. And again, he started all of a sudden when it was popular to like tee off on me. I'd see him on Fox News and I'd see him tweeting at me. And then like a day later, we'd pass each other on the congressional steps going up to the Capitol. And he'd be like, hey, I've got a great restaurant that we need to go to. Like, let's try and find time to do it. I'm like, what is this? But like to these guys, it's not even real. Like, it's not real.
All right. Again, that was from the Midas Touch podcast. I think this is a great, fantastic explanation of how these politicians, many of them act behind the scenes. For them, people often wonder how politicians can be so phony. But for many of them, it's not public service, it's entertainment. So in their minds, they're simply entertainers. They're performing. I mean, people like Ted Cruz, it's so obvious how fake that guy is. But Eric Swalwell is not immune from this. So if you follow the 2020 Democratic primary at all, Eric Swalwell engaged in this kind of performance himself countless times. I have a great example of one right here. This is when he was announcing his candidacy for the primary.
I'm the son of two Republicans. I married a Hoosier from southern Indiana who grew up in Pence country. I've worked with Republicans my whole life, reaching across the dinner table and reaching across the aisle. I go on Fox News just so most of my family can see me on TV. We must unite our deeply divided country. So I pledge to lead our country with a team of rivals, a blended cabinet of Republicans and Democrats. Not because it'll be easy, and we may have to send out a search party to find more Republicans who can put country over party.
So Eric Swalwell, in that first clip, talked about how, fake these Republicans are. Yet here he is wanting to put them in his cabinet if he became president, which, of course, the idea of Eric Swalwell ever winning the Democratic primary was just so hilarious. But here he is pretending that that's what the problem is, that, what the issue is? We aren't working enough with Republicans, the very ones that I say our WWE performers. It's so dishonest. Like, he must know he engages in this himself all the time. So very few politicians are immune from this. I mean, really, it's like, in terms of the Senate, Bernie Sanders is the only guy that I think is real 100% of the time. Even when he does things that I don't agree with, I still think he's being real. But the vast majority of them are performers. I mean, we saw that as well with someone like Elizabeth Warren during the primary when she was attacking Bernie Sanders randomly. It's, you know, at the end of the day, a lot of these people are simply there for themselves, simply there to further their career. Very few of them are really there to try and help people. And that's why someone like Bernie Sanders went, you know, largely unnoticed on a national level for decades, until finally when he ran for president, people sort of dug up his history and saw this was a guy who was fighting for the average person his entire career. So, you know, people like that, they're the real the real people. Everyone else are performers. But even like Swalwell in that clip, in that first clip, he said of Republicans, they think I'm performing as well. So, you know, he was discussing how they were projecting their thoughts onto him, which happens quite a bit on, you know, a number of issues. But that this is why they think you're also a performer, Eric. It's because of shit like that. So just incredible. That said, I do think Eric Swalwell's description was a great breakdown of how politics in Washington is very much just like pro wrestling. All right, that's that story. Next up, it's going to be cinema, then the wrap up. And of course, I'll talk a bit with the audience. But let me grab a chat here. Hold up. I lost my mouse. DV, it cut you off again. DVDV says, Swal kettle be like, hi pot, you're black. Indeed. All right. Let me prep the next story, and I'll be right back. All right, back again. This Kyrsten Sinema story, it's quite something. David needs to pop that shirt off. I'm a father now. Dad body. It's not happening. I in fact need to get into shape. That's what I need to do. But before I do that, let me do this story. Democrats in Arizona are done with Kyrsten Sinema and her obstructing, with a majority coming out in support of a primary challenge. Now, let me start that intro again. That was weird. I paced that really oddly. Pacing was all off. All right, here we go. Democrats in Arizona are done with Kyrsten Sinema, as she, of course, has been a obstructing force in the Democratic Party, preventing a lot from getting done. And now a majority in Arizona are coming out in support of primarying her, which unfortunately cannot be done for another 3 years, as she is not up for re-election till then. But that said, let's go through some of these numbers. And also, I'll get to in a minute here, maybe surprising to some of you, the policies that people in Arizona support. So first up here, Data for Progress has this new poll out. Sinema fails to, I'll start with this one. Sinema receives weak approval relative to Democratic colleagues. So you can see here, Mark Kelly, the other Democratic senator in the state, a lot more popular than Sinema. So this is overall. Mark Kelly sits at 50% approve. Joe Biden right there with him. Kyrsten Sinema at 44% overall. But the breakdown when we get to Democrats is just crazy. So 94% of Democrats in Arizona approve right now of Joe Biden. 85% approve of Mark Kelly. Only 54% approve of Kyrsten Sinema. I mean, this is a massive gap. Now, among independents, also hurts her. So this is, the media often tries to portray the idea that these so-called moderates, they call Sinema and Manchin moderates when they are just right-wing corporate Democrats. But they try to push the idea out there that these are Sinema, Manchin, they are in the middle of the country. If that were the case, then shouldn't you see strong support from independents? But you have here Sinema sitting at 40% approval among independents. Meanwhile, Mark Kelly at 45, Joe Biden at 44. Now, it does change when we get to Republicans. Sinema support among Republicans at 36, which seems fairly high. Mark Kelly at 22 and Joe Biden at 14. Now, similar numbers here from favorable. So Sinema fails to achieve majority favorables with any party. So you see here, overall, Joe Biden, 51, Mark Kelly, 47, the governor of Arizona, 44, Sinema, 38. But again, the big numbers here among Democrats, 95% support for Joe Biden, Mark Kelly, 77% favorable, Sinema, 42% favorable among Democrats. So these kinds of numbers, and by the way, independents, Sinema, the lowest, 38% favorable among independents. Now, this is the kind of thing, these are the kind of numbers that show you that Sinema is ripe for a primary. If somebody were to challenge her to the left, or even someone who's more like Mark Kelly, who isn't on the left, but he is not obstructing the way that Sinema and Manchin are, then there's a really good chance, especially if they have name recognition in the state, that they could defeat Sinema. Now, of course, the problem is that that would be 3 years out, as she's not up for re-election for a while. But still, if this continues, if her obstructing continues, then she may be facing a serious primary challenge in the future. But more here from Mother Jones on that data. Saying here beyond the top lines, though, there are some ominous numbers for Sinema's long-term standing back home. Democratic voters overwhelmingly support a $15 an hour minimum wage, according to the survey. Sinema drew the ire of activists this spring for casting a largely symbolic vote against adding such a minimum wage hike to the coronavirus stimulus package. They support getting rid of the legislative filibuster and overwhelmingly back the PRO Act, which would expand rights and protections for labor unions, but which Sinema has not signed on to. After voters were read a script linking the filibuster to Republican obstruction, 66% of Democrats said that if given the chance in a 2024 Senate primary, they would vote for a different candidate who would get rid of the filibuster. 66% of Democrats said they would vote against Sinema in a primary. So there you go. If this were held today, now, of course, look, this is one poll, but if this kind of approach from Sinema continues, it's any primary challenger. Of course, they would need name recognition. That would be a big part of it. But they would have a really good shot if they're able to get their name out there to defeat Sinema. And on the policy issues, Arizona wants higher wages. Arizona supports the PRO Act. They support getting rid of the filibuster. So they are pro-labor rights, pro-wage hike, pro-reducing obstruction, yet Sinema on the wrong side of all of these issues. So let's hope if someone in Arizona right now who may have some standing in the state is considering a challenge against Sinema, I hope they do that. I hope they take it seriously. And you know what? Start as early as possible. Get your name out there, get known, and start running against this obstructor. Because if this continues, Biden's really not going to get much done. And, you know, to be fair, Biden also deserves a lot of the criticism as well, as he could be pushing these senators a lot more than he has, and really may just be using them as sort of a shield. Because you have people like Chris Coons, who is, you know, sort of the de facto Senate voice for Joe Biden, being from the same state of Delaware, that would likely just take the place of Sinema or Manchin if one of those weren't there. So it really is a rot within the Senate itself. It's not just those two senators, but they are the most high-profile ones. And if Joe Biden wanted to get something done like a wage hike, he could have got that done by overruling the parliamentarian in the budget reconciliation package and putting that through, but he didn't do that. So you see here, it's not just about Sinema or Manchin, but they, of course, play a role. And the more that these so-called moderates, really right-wing Democrats, are pushed out of the party, the better chance there is for the party, for Joe Biden, to get some actual work done. All right, that's that. Next up will be the wrap-up. And it's quite a wrap. There is a lot, but less than usual, as I've learned my lesson. I cannot put 20 stories into a single segment and think it's going to be worth watching. So I'm going to prep this. I will be right back. And then after this segment, I'll chat about with the audience. We'll have a chat, take some super chats, take some normie chats, and then be on our way. But I'll be right back. All right, back for the wrap-up segment, which is it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Again, this is the formerly known as Tweets of the Week, but it just makes more sense to not call it that, especially because a lot of people are not on Twitter, don't care about Twitter, and I don't want to make people feel like they got to be on Twitter to watch that segment. All right. It is now time for the weekly wrap-up. So this is a segment where I go over stories from the week that I missed, and even though I'm not going to go as deep on any of these issues as I would in a separate video, I still want to discuss them, and I'll link to everything here below the video, so if you want to read more into any of these stories, you can check that out. But let's start here with this story that I enjoyed and I laughed over. Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene's nationwide fundraising tour has been a bust, raising less than $60,000 in 2 months and spending about 4 times that amount. There you go. You want to read more? I will link to it below the video, but that is hilarious. Next story here. Americans' medical debts are bigger than was known, totaling $140 billion. So a new study finds that healthcare has become the country's largest source of debt in collections. Those debts are largest where Medicaid wasn't expanded. Of course, I have discussed this issue countless times. As somebody who experiences universal healthcare, a single-payer system in Canada, I know just how crazy the American healthcare system is. It's one of the main reasons I never really seriously considered moving to the US, even though I had thought about it at times. But I don't want to live in a country where healthcare is not guaranteed to me. And it is completely insane. Medical bankruptcy is the most common form of bankruptcy in the US. It doesn't even exist in other countries that have universal healthcare. Of course, medical debt, even though it may exist in small pockets, like in Canada, pharmacare isn't covered nationally. Dental care isn't covered nationally. So I'm sure in certain cases, people that have serious, dental debt, I'm sure that can be a thing, but nowhere near what it is, of course, in America. And of course, those limitations on the Canadian system are not felt by other countries that have real national health care. And of course, it's an issue with the lack of us needing to expand healthcare further. So the issue, if there's any issue with Canada's healthcare system, is that it doesn't go far enough. Not that it's single payer, is that it doesn't cover as much as it should. But this, of course, is a uniquely American issue. Next here, this has actually been going on for a while, but I want to bring it up here. Alabama coal miners enter 4th month on strike. So I will link to this. You can read more about it here. And also, I want to suggest a follow if you're on Twitter, or even just look up her work. Kim Kelly does fantastic labor reporting. Check her out. Follow her on Twitter. She covered this story as well last month. So I'll link to that again below the video. Next one here. This is a clip that I want to share because it made me laugh. Julian here tweeted this saying, that face when you show up to present a group project and nobody else did the readings. AOC knows what's up. Check out this clip.
I learned a while ago, when I first got to Congress, I thought, man, people definitely study what they're talking about here. Then I got here and I realized that a lot of my colleagues don't even read the bills that they are commenting on. But for anyone who's curious, it's right here at the desk. We're making lots of statements that have nothing to do with the legislation. And frankly, if I made comments that very publicly demonstrated that I didn't read the legislation I was discussing, I'd be embarrassed. But that is an aside.
So this was a discussion about public banking. And Republicans there were claiming that this was a government takeover of banks when it's simply a public option for banking. But imagine what would have happened if it was AOC who got the information wrong and not Republicans. I mean, AOC says one little thing wrong and the media jumps on her. And in some cases, look, yes, she deserves criticism at times, but look at the way the media treats her compared to conservatives who lie all the time, who never read anything they're passing. There's no scrutiny at all on what they do or say, but it's very different when it comes to AOC. And look, this is, I think, one of the few lawmakers who actually care, like Bernie Sanders, actually does the readings, actually wants to help people, also understands limitations, also strategically, I think, gets things wrong sometimes, doesn't understand the power that she has, doesn't use the power the way she can. But that really is my biggest issue with her, is I think she has a lot more power than she realizes and can really work a lot better to try and change the Democratic Party from within. That said, clearly she cares about the issues, cares about helping people, and her support here of public banking is one example of that. Another example, this issue very close to me. AOC has again filed an amendment to remove a federal research barrier in the hopes of promoting research into psychedelics like MDMA and psilocybin. So psilocybin magic mushrooms. This is very important. It is so ridiculous that there is this barrier on research into these psychedelics, considering the studies that have been done on these substances have been very positive. People that have had serious PTSD, whether it's through because of childhood or maybe they're a veteran, they have a experience, a supervised experience, a professional experience with MDMA, psilocybin, or another psychedelic, and they get over that PTSD in one session. So it is incredibly effective. Of course, I do think if we're going to at some point legalize these substances, they should be in controlled circumstances. So I think I think they should be one of the tools that doctors have when it comes to trying to treat people that suffer from anxiety, PTSD, stress. Psychedelics are very effective. I've discussed before, there's a whole video online of my experience with ayahuasca. I went to Peru. I had a week experience with a full week experience in Peru taking ayahuasca. And it helped a lot with my anxiety. I suffered from severe social anxiety. I still have, I'm not, completely over it. But it helped a lot dealing with that anxiety, dealing with stress, giving me sort of a more clear outlook on life. And that's the experience that many people have on psychedelics. And I think it's very important that there's a lot more research done into these substances, as I think it will bring a lot of benefits to people, especially when it comes to stress, anxiety, PTSD, and just in general, opening your mind up and really allowing you to experience life from almost a different, like a third person perspective, where you're able to see your life in a more objective way than you're normally able to. But on these psychedelics, oftentimes you sort of have this out of body experience, in the sense that you really get to view your life as a third party figure as opposed to, you yourself. So it gives you a very different perspective on life and really helps a lot of people in various ways. Last thing here. Recent polling in Canada shows the NDP jumping 6 points while the Conservatives drop 5 points. Look how close this is right now. So Liberals, of course, there's very likely going to be an election called this year, could be next month. So you have here, Liberals are almost certainly going to either keep a minority government or potentially form a majority. But apart from that, going down, if this is going to be a trend, and it could be, looking at who supports the NDP, younger people, that of course their base continues growing because of that. Millennials, Gen Z, much in support of the NDP. Meanwhile, at the same time, conservative support is falling off. Their support largely older, and nature takes hold. Older people die off, younger people get to vote, and you have the NDP support increasing. I think look, we may be seeing at some point in the future, maybe in the next 5 years, the NDP at the very least in the opposition. So I would very much like to see that. And I think Jagmeet Singh, while I have my criticisms, I think he clearly is a step up from Tom Mulcair, the former leader. So really right now, great trend here for the NDP. At the same time, Greens dropping 3 points. They've had a lot of drama right now around their leader, Annamie Paul, and the fight that she's in with the federal council in the Green Party, and them right now essentially trying to push her out. There's a lot going on there. It's impossible to summarize it all right now, but it's hurting their support. So the Green Party may potentially even lose the few seats that they have. They have 2 right now. They had 3 before Jenica Atwin moved over to the Liberals. So now they have 2 seats, Elizabeth May and Paul Manley. I like both. I like Paul Manley. I like Elizabeth May. I hope they keep their seats. But based on how things are going right now, they may even lose their seats. And Annamie Paul, the leader, still doesn't have a seat, is still trying to run in Toronto Centre, where she has no chance at winning. Right now, a Liberal holds that seat. A Liberal who is famous, used to be on television on a news network. In fact, I think I may have worked with her once. I used to work at CTV News. So she used to work at CTV News. She's now a Liberal MP. So there's Annamie Paul has no hope of winning that riding. But anyways, whole different discussion. Point being, NDP looking good, Conservatives looking bad, and that makes me happy. So there you go. That is the wrap up for this week. All right. There you go. I went a little deeper on those last 2 issues, but I care more about those issues. Now, let's have some chats. What's going on, people? See some super chats here. Let me grab those. Where was I? Nick Coletti says, to what extent is the Rational National affiliated with TYT? On Facebook. So only on Facebook. I'll post videos there and they'll share it on their pages. That's the extent of it. Because I had no audience at all on Facebook. And it really is. Facebook is a very different audience. Like it's the comments there, like it's very much skews older. So, you know, my content there really isn't all that popular regardless. That said, yeah, so Facebook is my affiliation with them there. Adam Ulibari says native resistance to capitalism and settler colonialism were first forms of class organizing. Sorry, it's cutting off. They paved the road for social class struggles. Left rarely discuss this. Why? Example, doctrine of discovery. So, and your link's not going to show because links don't show up in chats for whatever reason. I mean, part of the issue is it depends what you cover, right? I cover largely day-to-day news. I do think it's important to historicize a lot of this stuff. And yeah, to be fair, I could do a much better job at doing that. But I don't know. I bring up these issues where I think it directly applies, but I can understand that, you know, having that constant, yeah, no, you're right. It should be discussed a lot more, and it's just it would help to add a lot of perspective to some of these issues. Celeste, thank you for your chat. Prairie Fire, thank you for yours. RNC says, have you seen Loki? It's so good. It's funny you mentioned that because actually I have. It's the only Marvel show I've watched. I'm not super into like the MCU. I've watched most of the movies, I think, but I'm not like, I've only watched all of them once at most. I haven't watched any of the movies more than once. But Loki's really good as its own separate, even as its own separate thing. And I never really cared for the character. I thought the Thor movies were largely boring except for Ragnarok. But Loki, great show. It's very interesting and sort of fourth wall breaking, which I like. And yeah, I dig it. Radzoso says the Cleveland Indians. I will say though on Loki, I kind of wish it was just a one and done thing, but there's going to be a season 2, which is fine. But I feel like they could have wrapped it up in a way that would have made it just like a good, 6-episode season. But I guess they're going to continue it. Radzoso says the Cleveland Indians chose a new name, the Guardians, inspired by Guardians of Traffic sculptures on the Hope Memorial Bridge. Yeah, I saw that this morning. Really cool. I think it's a good name. People were, of course, people out there saying it's the worst name ever. It's not the worst. Utah Jazz, I think, is the worst. It's the worst name. Maybe there's more to why Utah Jazz are called the Utah Jazz, but I don't really associate jazz with Utah. And even still, it's just a weird name. But I think the Guardians is a great name. So, I think they were due for a name change, and I think it works well. It translates well in terms of the font from their previous logo. It's about the same length as Indians, so I think it's a solid name. Tony D, let me see. Says the Rational National chat are smart and kind. The host is very calm. Thank you for your observation. I like it. Thank you. Yes, the chat is smart. Occasionally we have some people here stirring trouble, but that's all good. It's what you get in a free chat country. But New Orleans Pelicans is worse. You know what? Yeah, probably. Yeah, Pelicans for the name of a team is really, really odd. I don't really get that. Then again, we got the Blue Jays. But I like, Blue Jays are dope. If you see a Blue Jay, you look at that Blue Jay. It's like, wow, look, that's a Blue Jay. Pelicans, I guess they're cool. I don't really see Pelicans very often, though. But, yeah. All right. Some more normie chats. I'm going through the chat here on the side. see what pops up. Oh, a new super chat. Sorry, super chats take precedent. Christian OLS says, are you aware of the appropriation of magic mushrooms from Mexico? Also, any predictions on that? I am not aware. No, I'm not. Also, any predictions for my writing for Jody Wilson-Raybould's writing? I'm so disappointed she's not running again. I haven't seen who's running in that writing, so I can't give you a proper prediction. I mean, I guess in terms of party, maybe the NDP. Maybe we'll see if she supports, a certain party or candidate in that race. But it's really disappointing that she's not running again. She, one of the few people that spoke out against Trudeau as a liberal, then left the party, became an independent. Jody Wilson-Raybould is fantastic. Celeste says, have you seen Stranger Things? I saw the first 2 seasons, and I don't think I watched the third. So I'm not up to date on what's going on in that show. It was okay. Like, for me, Stranger Things is a lot more about the nostalgia, like the feeling, the aesthetic, than really the story. The story's all right, but the aesthetic, I think, is really what sells Stranger Things. And as somebody who loves the 80s, I mean, it takes place in the 80s, and it really captures that vibe really well. Let's see here. Any fun plans this weekend, David? Not sure. I think I have to buy a shelf. We need some shelving because we have a baby now, and he has toys and clothes, and they're kind of all over the place. So I probably have to go buy a shelf. Apart from that, I really need just like relaxing and gaming time if possible. I'm getting back into Halo, which is bringing up some nostalgia for me. I was big into Halo 2 and Halo 3. So I've been playing the Master Chief Collection a lot. At least, well, not a lot, but when I have opportunity. So probably gaming and buying a shelf. And of course, hanging out with my family. Winston, yeah, I saw that clip. I don't know if I want to. I don't want to engage in that stupidity. I mean, I want to engage in that stupidity, but I don't think it's productive of me to do so. But man, that clip was ridiculous. Did a new chat come in? It did. Sunil says, can you explain how someone is pro Operation Warp Speed and anti-vax? Inconsistent? I just think these people who are anti-vax, like, they're showing up in the hospital getting medication, and they are like, that's okay. But that's okay. But the vaccine, can't take the vaccine. I don't get the thought process. I don't get it at all. Of course, there's so much inconsistency, so much hypocrisy in your thinking. I try not to make any sense of it. Let me see what else here. U.S. is showing propaganda against Peru with Pedro Castillo winning. I have not seen that. I did see that finally he was announced as the winner in Peru, but I have not seen this propaganda going out. But of course, I would not be surprised. Super chat. Blue Knight. Anything new on Pegasus, particularly how to defend against it? That's a spyware thing. I don't know much about it. So I'm the wrong person to ask. I do not know. Did you get a haircut? No, it's booked. So a week ago on Twitter, I told people, a week ago, right? I told everyone that I booked my haircut. It is booked for Monday. I still honestly do not know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know how much I'm going to cut. I don't know if I'm going to go back to 2019 haircut. I don't know what I'm doing. So I may just ask the professional when I'm there, see what he thinks. But it's probably hard for them to give you advice when you got to cover your face with a mask. So I don't know. I'm getting a haircut on Monday, but I have no idea what it's going to look like. How could you be pro Medicare for all or universal health care yet be anti-vax? Because, so I discussed some of this in the, and by the way, just in case anyone's just tuning in now, I'm not anti-vax. This person's asking in general, how can somebody be in support of universal health care and not be for the vaccines? As I discussed in my video today, discussing the anti-vaxxers who were hospitalized, I think, because one of them, the second one in that video, she is a pharmaceutical researcher. I think part of it is skepticism of big pharma, which is warranted. Of course, big pharma deserves skepticism. I mean, look at the way they pushed pain pills on everybody and the destruction that's caused. Really trying to have a pill for as a solution for everything. There's a lot of criticism of big pharma that's deserved. But you have to be able to separate that from the vaccines, from the science in the vaccines, from the obvious data out in the field, from seeing that 98.8% of people in the hospitals with COVID-19 are unvaccinated. So while there's healthy skepticism of big pharma, I think that's good. You can't have this blanket skepticism that doesn't have any rational thought within it. You really have to be able to separate those things. And it's, unfortunately, many people, it's not just the right. In fact, when it comes to this particular area, I think that part is mostly a left-wing issue, or even an apolitical issue, where people are, they're not really political, but they're into health and wellness, they're into natural medicine, and I have nothing against any of that. I think a lot of that's actually great. As I discussed earlier, I have personal experience with psychedelics that helped me a lot, than way more than any pill did. But you can't apply that to the vaccines. Vaccines are its own thing. It's very different, and you're seeing the data, you're seeing the science. It doesn't make any sense to apply a blanket skepticism to everything medicine. It just doesn't make any sense. Brian Holmes says, Dave, what is your take on wearing a mask and being vaccinated with the Delta variant out there? So when I'm indoors, I'm wearing a mask. And the reason I'm doing that, even though I have both shots, is because I have a child. So I can still, even when you're vaccinated, you can still carry the virus. So I don't want to potentially get the virus from somebody else. And then that's also, I think restaurants are open now in Ontario, but I haven't gone to a restaurant because I don't want to get COVID-19 from someone else in a restaurant or bring my child to a restaurant indoors. So yeah, that's why I'm still wearing a mask. I don't want to potentially give my son the virus, but to everyone else, I guess it's their choice. But just get vaccinated. Just get vaccinated. Do you people realize, and not you people, I know most of you in the chat, I'm sure, are vaccinated, but in general, do people realize how lucky they are to be in a country, assuming you're in Canada or the US, where vaccines are readily available, where you can get them? So many countries right now don't have access to these vaccines. And here are people who are privileged in Canada or in the West that are not getting vaccinated and just being so stupid, not realizing how lucky they are to even have the opportunity. Some more super chats. Prairie Fire, did I read this? I don't think I have. Says that's super chat is a bride. Is a bride? That super chat is a bride for you to shout out. I think you meant bride. To shout out my YouTube channel, Prairie Fire. It's mostly just farm related stuff. Going to get political soon. Love your work. Left is best. All right, cool. Thank you for your great super chat donation. And Prairie Fire, check them out for farm stuff. Reptancy, did I say that right? I think I'm reading that word wrong. Says Pedro Castillo propaganda were put out today by Washington Post. Title of the article proves democracy survived a squeaker election. Oh man. God. The misinformation, the propaganda from these fucking outlets never ends. And it's so disappointing because this is the how they get people. Because the Washington Post has writers, have people, and the New York Times, they've done great work, great reporting, great investigative pieces, and then they put out propaganda about U.S. imperialism. So it really is just the most dishonest way to try and fool people. Of course, I haven't read the piece. I'm taking your word for it because they've done it in the past. So I would not be surprised if they're pushing that propaganda out there. I mean, if you go look at Bolivia, the New York Times and their back and forth coverage of Bolivia. I mean, it's first they were wrong, then a few months later they admitted they were wrong, and then a few months later they went back on admitting they were wrong. Like it's all over the fucking place. It really is. It's disgusting, but they get away with it. Nicola Curtin says yesterday in Westminster, Labour MP Don Butler pointed out Boris Johnson is a liar. Yet she was the one who had to leave the chamber. Comment. That is, I think I understand why. Because we have a similar issue in Canada where if you use language in a certain way that can be, seen as offensive or something, then you have to be the one to apologize. Even if you're right, even if you're correct, your point is factually correct, you have to apologize or you have to leave the chamber. It's really stupid. I mean, It's putting decorum over facts. That's the biggest issue with it. And yeah, it's a problem in I guess in the UK as it is in Canada. Creative Space. Let me find your chat because I cut it off. Creative Space says skepticism in general. Dogs we now know lots of things on their vaccines we did not know 20 years ago. This vaccine risks myocarditis, blood clots, possible long-term lung problems. Just scared either way. I understand skepticism. I do. The issue, like what you're mentioning there, people are dying now from COVID-19. It's one thing if the vaccine, if it was about, I don't know, the flu or something, where it's not, if you're a healthy individual, you're not really going to die from the flu, then, the skepticism maybe applies a little, it makes more sense. But when we're talking about people who are dying from this virus, like if you're taking a risk, if you think taking the vaccine is a risk, I think it's a much bigger risk to get COVID-19. So that's how I weigh these two things. So if you have I'm not saying skepticism is wrong. It's fine to be skeptical, but also look at things on a rational level. COVID-19, especially the Delta variant right now, putting people in hospital, only the unvaccinated. I'm going to take the vaccine. That's the way I see it. This is a great point. Monroe 200 something says people stuffed their faces with fast food full of chemicals, yet they're worried about a vaccine. Yeah, like think of the amount of shit you put into your body every day, whether it's meat, sugar, this kind of stuff that we know hurts you. We know it hurts you, yet people will do that but they won't take a vaccine even though 98.8% of people in the hospital are unvaccinated. Celeste says I wear a mask because I don't want anyone to see me. That's funny. I mean, if you think about it, it's probably, this era probably hasn't been terrible for celebrities. Like, they get to go in public probably a lot more comfortably and not worry about having to be swarmed by fans, because not everyone's really going to recognize them. Though I'm sure in some cases people still get recognized with a mask on, but I imagine a lot less. Brian Holmes says, I wonder how many anti-vaxxers smoke cigarettes. Sure, a lot do. If you just have a cold, you should wear a mask too. That from Christopher. I do think wearing a mask wearing is going to become a lot more common just in general. Like maybe during flu season. And yeah. I think people will continue wearing masks, you know, not obviously in as big numbers as they do now, but I do think it's a practice that will be a lot more common now that we have become used to it. Sorry for the long pause. I'm just reading through these chats, seeing if I can talk about anything here. Captain Spock, 1.2 million displaced in China floods, barely makes out news. Yeah. Yeah. China, Germany, today I think Turkey had massive floods as well. Yeah. And by the way, like, it's not really, I guess I could cover that stuff, but I discussed recently some other extreme weather in the West, and of course climate change, the climate crisis being at the heart of it. It's one of these things where if you can make a career out of just talking about extreme weather events and climate change being at the heart of it. A lot of these climate change topics for me are very disheartening, because we know what the solutions are. We know like the steps that we need to take, and we have very little power to make it happen immediately, and it has to be done now. And thinking about this issue depresses me, because I think about what world are we leaving to our children, and for that matter, what world are we leaving to us right now? Because this is happening now. People are being displaced from their homes now, and it's going to continue to be an issue. And if you're on the right and you think you don't care about climate change, you should care about it, because I imagine if you're on the right, you also hate immigration. You don't want migrants coming on your land the way you see it. So you know what's going to lead to mass migration? The climate crisis. So we have to deal with this issue immediately. And of course, that isn't just that's the right wing framing, but the left wing framing on that is that these people, of course, want to live in their own countries, live their lives. They don't want to have to move. So there's so many reasons why we have to address this issue now, and yeah, it's going to take a lot more work than what we've done so far. Creative Space says masks work. I went to Disneyland 2 weeks ago. No vaccine, yet wore my mask. Girlfriend, same. My friend came. He was vaccinated, did not wear a mask, got sick. Yeah, of course masks work. But you still be vaccinated. If you were vaccinated and wore a mask, there you go. Double the protection. But and by the way, even if you get COVID-19 when you're sick, I discussed this earlier, but if you're coming in late to the stream, the symptoms are nowhere near where they would be if you weren't vaccinated. So it lessens, even if you may get a little sick, you may have a little fever or headache. If you weren't vaccinated, you would likely be in the hospital. So understand that it's not necessarily about protecting you from COVID, from getting COVID, as much as it's about protecting you from dying and being and receiving or experiencing severe symptoms and being hospitalized over that. Another super chat came in. Let me see. Nicola Curtin says, I remember seeing a photo of Richard Branson when climate change hit his property in Necker Island. And I said, that shows the bosses are in trouble. I mean, yeah. Though, I don't follow Branson very closely, so I'm not sure what he has or hasn't done on the climate crisis. But I imagine that's the only thing that may, push some of these people into action is when their own land is affected. If their multi-million-dollar homes are overrun with floods or whatever it is, then maybe at that point they're going to become more engaged in the topic. But until they see any personal impact from the climate crisis, they're just not going to care. All right, probably getting off soon, but I'll grab some more. Winston says, are you no longer using Twitch? I still haven't decided what I'm doing with Twitch. I still haven't decided. Because in case you missed the story, the bit of news that I shared a few weeks ago, they took me off partner. So partnership is kind of like, I don't know. I'm not sure if this is really a YouTube equivalent, but I guess it's kind of like being verified on YouTube or Twitter. But they canceled that. They took me off partner, claiming that I was streaming Twitch content somewhere else at the same time, when I never was. I mean, if you follow me on Twitch, I barely am on Twitch to begin with, but when I am, I'm not putting that content anywhere else. And so there's like a 24-hour exclusive period around Twitch content. The only time I shared Twitch content on YouTube was well after that 24-hour period, and it was like, months and months ago. It wasn't even close to when I was taken off a partner. So I don't know what happened there. I'm not sure if someone else uploaded my content to YouTube and that's what triggered it. I have no idea. But I tried, getting in contact with them. No one contacted me. Twitch is shockingly worse than YouTube when it comes to talking with creators. So I have a sour taste in my mouth from Twitch. So I'm not sure. I still want to game occasionally online. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with Twitch yet. It kind of pissed me off. Oh, did I miss the chat? I did. Dwayne Bramble says, "Hi, David. Great show as always. Wouldn't you say the internet is somewhat socialism?" The internet is somewhat socialism. To be honest, I haven't thought about that. I'm. You still need an internet connection. I guess if Wi-Fi is free where you are, some cities have like Wi-Fi for everyone, then maybe. But I don't know. I guess in some ways it can be considered that. Stars Girl says Canada is going to exceed the U.S. in vaccinations. It already did. I covered that story earlier. We are at 53% Canadians fully vaccinated. America's at 48%. So I think a part of that is because of American propaganda and the hold that conservative media has on the U.S. that Canada doesn't. I mean, to be clear, Canada's mainstream press is still very economically conservative. But when I say conservative, I'm talking about, like Tucker Carlson conspiracy bullshit. We don't have a Tucker in Canada. So I think that has kind of led to there being less misinformation here compared to the U.S. That said, of course, we still have our pockets of people who are not going to get vaccinated because of something they read on Facebook. So that's always going to be an issue. But we still have to get to the big, I guess, 75% is sort of the goal for a lot of us. But, I would like to see 90%, 95% vaccinated. That'd be great. But that may be a ways off, if ever. Dwayne says, I meant by the creating of the internet. Oh, because of the investment from the government. Yeah, I mean, I see where you're going with this. I don't necessarily connect the two, but I hear what you're saying. Bivaria says Leafs or Habs. Leafs. But as a Leafs fan, I will forever be disappointed. So my hopes are always very low. I never expect anything. And then a part of me always expects something. And then I'm disappointed again. That happened, of course, this year when they lost in the first round. But then, I'm going to support the underdog when it comes to, like, if the Leafs aren't in it, I'm going to support the underdog. So I supported the Habs throughout the playoffs after they beat the Leafs and had that incredible run. But unfortunately, they lost to just a better team in Tampa Bay. Tony D says, hey, Canada, you agreed with the USA to block vaxxes for the globe. I covered this, my first story in the stream. Canada, yes, is doing that. The US, though, does not. So I did a story on this a month ago or a month or two ago. Biden reversed that decision. He now supports the TRIPS waiver. So that's incredible. But Canada, Germany, and the UK, maybe others, but I know those three are blocking it right now. And for the TRIPS waiver to go through, it has to be unanimous. Every single WTO member has to support it. And you have these rich nations right now obstructing. So it's very, very disgusting. And we're really not going to see, real global progress on the vaccines and getting rid of the pandemic until these vaccines are mass produced at for a fraction of the cost and get into the arms of people all over the world. All right, probably jumping off shortly, but I gotta say I do enjoy chatting. I should just jump on occasionally just to do that. I just like talking to the chat. Watchmaker says, "Hey David, do you speak French?" No. That was my French way of saying no. I do not, which sucks. I took, at least I'm not sure if this is every province, but I had to take French up until grade 9, and didn't really retain much, unfortunately. At least for my brain, I would need to be immersed in the language, from birth for me to be able to speak more than one language. Because I've tried to learn a bit of Spanish, French, of course, Portuguese. It just does not stick with me. My brain's at capacity. I'm not able to do it. I just feel like some people are more prone to learning different languages. My brain is not. Christian says, "What games did you play on Twitch?" I played Rocket League, Resident Evil once before I stopped playing that, though I should get back into that game. Mario. I don't know. I played a lot of games on Twitch. It was mostly, it wasn't really about the games, those streams. It was more about, chatting about politics while I was playing a game. So I'm a big gamer, but there's not one game that I stick to like some people. I'm sort of all over the place. I like to play everything. Baron Saturday says, "Well, your English is quite good, David." Thank you. That's the thing. My English isn't great. Like, obviously, it's the only language I know. But if you've watched me long enough, I screw up sentences. I say things improperly, like I almost just did there. So, if I can't master English, I'm not going to master a second language. It's not going to happen. I also grew up, when I was younger, I had a serious stutter that still comes up every now and then, but that may also have been a barrier to me learning a second language. Like I really didn't, talk a lot till I was, or like hold a conversation till I was probably almost 10. All right. I could be here all day, but at some point, I gotta go. Aquarius says, "Well, with my anxiety, I tend to stutter if I'm trying to talk fast." Yup, I hear that. That's my issue. Especially if I get worked up on a topic, and it just comes out like blah, blah, blah. Like, I want to get out a sentence in like half a second. So yeah, I took when I was younger, I think I was like 8 years old. I took speech therapy. That helped a little bit, but there's always a little bit, just a tiny bit of that stutter or anxiety, whatever it is that comes up. Okay, I keep saying this, but I could just sit here all day. I mean, the longer I sit here, the less of a chance there is that I have to go out there and change a diaper. So there's always that, but no, I shouldn't do that. I think he's taking a nap now anyways. Biden too has a stutter. Yes, he does, but his stutter isn't really the issue. It's him completely losing what he's talking about, and it's happened quite often now. Like you can see, watch Biden's debate with God, I'm forgetting his name. The former VP candidate. Why did I forget his name? But in 2012, Biden had a fantastic debate. Spoke well, no issues, and you clearly see a decline since then. So if you watch, old videos of Biden, old debates, he's great. Sure, he'll have like a stutter occasionally, but that isn't the issue. It's he's really not able to, perform at the level that he once did. Nicola Curtin says, I used to have all those social anxieties and have managed to attend local Labor Party meetings and speak in front of the whole room. Congratulations. Fantastic. That is a great way to overcome it. You really have to just throw yourself into it. And unfortunately, as somebody who suffered from severe social anxiety when I was younger, it's so scary thinking about that you have to just throw yourself into it, but you have to. That's the way you get over it. Like the more you expose yourself to uncomfortable situations, the more they become less comfortable, or they become more comfortable the more you expose yourself to them. So I'm glad you did that. That's how you got to do it. Like the biggest thing I did to get over it was just move away. Like I was living at home when I was like 20, and then I went to college and I moved away. And that helped a lot in terms of getting me over a lot of my fears. And now, I enjoy public speaking now. I hate the beforehand. I hate the thought of it. I hate the anticipation, the anxiety before. I hate that. But when I'm actually up there and I know what I'm talking about and I'm comfortable, I really enjoy public speaking. In fact, in some ways, I almost enjoy talking to, a group of people instead of just talking to one person one-on-one. It's almost easier for me to talk to an audience than it is to talk to an individual. Tony D says, your chat is awesome. I agree. The chat is pretty awesome. That's why I haven't left yet. Chat is too good. How long have I been on here for? Hour 42. At least half the show has just been engaging with the chat, because I got through those stories pretty quickly. Paul Ryan. Yes, Paul Ryan. That's why I forgot his name. It's so basic. Paul Ryan. It's two first names. But yeah, for some reason, so I forgot Paul Ryan's name. The one name I keep forgetting when I need to not forget it is Joe Crowley. I'll bring up AOC defeating, and then I forget the guy's name. Names for me is one of those things that I struggle with. I will meet you and I will forget your name literally within the first 10 seconds of meeting you, and it's because I'm more focused on just the interaction as opposed to listening to what you're saying. And that isn't a judgment on the person I'm meeting. It's more of a judgment on myself. I want to make sure I'm being kind and courteous, but in the process, I will forget your name. Aquarius says, hey, bring your girlfriend on chat one day. She's going to have to want to do that. She does not want to do that. So unlikely, but you never know. One day, maybe I'll convince her. All right. I think that's my most spoken word on here is all right. Okay, now it's time to almost go. Typical Canadian says maybe your guy will have a chance to win the next leadership race with the Green Party. I hope so. It would be wonderful if Annamie Paul is, whether she leaves leadership or whatever happens after this next election, and Dimitri Lascaris comes back into the picture. That is how you build the Green Party. You have to reach out to an eco-socialist base. You cannot, continue trying to appeal to the same audience. You have to do something different. There has to be an actual voice that is challenging the parties in power on a consistent basis on foreign policy, which Dimitri does. So it would be wonderful if Dimitri Lascaris ran for leadership again. I would really like to see that. Paul needs to go, says Koru. I agree. I agree. Okay. All right. Thank you all for showing up. This was great. I enjoyed this. More chats are definitely needed in the future, but this was fantastic. Thank you for showing up, and see you again next week. I think I'm not going to be here next Friday. I may be here on Wednesday or Thursday for a live stream. But if not, see you the week after that, where I will be back. But until then, thank you all for showing up, and see you later. Goodbye.